Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 117 of the Peak of Serenity podcast. I am, as always, one of your hosts, emallson, and joining me, we have my co host, Anomoly.
Hello.
And this week, we're talking about the season 4 announcement. We have season 4 coming in just under a month at this point. That is paired
Yeah.
with some announced fairly significant nerfs to the raid.
Yes. Yes, as
Uh,
always.
and then other fun stuff, like the Dragonflight pre-order. We got some new priest talents. I don't know if we're spending much time at all on about them. Um,
Yes.
and just other stuff like that. It was really funny because like we missed podcast last week because Anam was on vacation.
I was getting sun, yep.
Nothing happened last week. Just like
No.
nothing happened last week. So it would have been the most boring episode. We would have had like an hour episode because that's all the content we would have had to talk about. And then this week
Exactly.
is just like hit after hit after hit after hit of new stuff. So
Oh
but
yeah.
before we get into that, Jailer Prog,
Yeah, we're done.
you're done.
Well, I'm done. Well, my guild is done. I wasn't actually there for the kill, but they killed it on Thursday. So we
Nice.
uh we
Nice.
got him right before the big nerfs to come in that we'll talk about. But yeah, I mean it's funny. It's one of the I was thinking back, it's one of like the last end bosses where I was like got to see it but didn't kill it, and it's been probably since like Kill Jaden
Yeah.
that's happened. Like I think I missed Sire Prague, but I missed all of it just because I was on
Right.
vacation again actually. Um but uh but yeah, so like I got about 150 of our 300 or so pulls, so about half the pulls in on it, but didn't get a chance to kill it. And yeah, they got it on Thursday. After adding a little bit of overtime. So we basically added 2 days over the past 2 weeks. So we typically raid Tuesday, Thursday. We added Wednesday, both last week and this week, to our schedule. So an additional 8 hours over the past 2 weeks we raided. But primarily just because in July coming up, we're actually gonna miss 2 weeks of rating just with people being out.
Right.
So and funnily enough, I don't think I might not actually get CE on my character just
Yeah.
because of like the timing of season 4 and how many raid weeks we actually have left.
Yeah.
But maybe I'll try and sneak myself in there on one of them. But no,
Yeah.
we they killed it. It was just, you know,
Awesome.
yeah.
Uh,
It was fun. Good.
so for my part, we are working on the jailer still. We have seen the end of phase 3. We have not successfully transitioned into phase 4 yet. Just because like we get to the end of phase 3 and like a minute into or a minute prior to that, we lose people or we have people that or we like miss the Azerite debuff refresh. So instead of doing plus 24% damage, we're doing, and that's a
Yeah.
losing 12% damage across the whole raid is pretty significant.
That is yeah, that's a ton of damage. And yeah, I think that's where we had I think if we look back, I'm just gonna pull up our wipe count, like particularly going into like our later pulls, that's literally where we would wipe
Yeah.
almost, 50% of the time or 70% of the time was just right around that transition point. But I mean, once you hit, I think we were talking about this right before the show started, but once you hit phase 4, if you get into phase 4 with everybody alive, it's like, 5, 6 pulls.
Yeah.
And you'll kill it, right? I mean, to
Yeah.
be fair, if you have your strat set up and all your positioning good, I think you were telling me you have a little bit of a secret strat coming up. Um,
Not so
Hopefully that
secret. We
helps.
we stole it from another
Yeah.
guild. It's super neat. So our initial like phase 4 strat, we were gonna do a big move away from the last defile bait and like set up to do all the mechanics and like that was good. Very much in line with some of the timings before people started like before some of the HP nerfs came in.
Mhm.
Um, and then last night, or actually Friday night, another guild killed it, and they had this really neat strat for phase 4 where
Oh,
you go into phase 4 and then you move the boss one hexagon, not like one of the big triangles, one hexagon, in order to line up his meteor cleave, so that you can get knocked back and not get knocked into a. And then you stand still,
interesting.
and the
Interesting.
the boss does not move until the decimator comes out and like spawns rubble over him, and
Uh-huh.
then you move like, and then you plant again. And so this kill, like their overall like damage and everything is not really that. It's not anything special. Like I
Yeah.
mean, they got CE, so it's good, but it's not anything like world shattering. Um,
Yeah.
and they only get to the first set of torments in phase 4, and then the boss is dead.
That is
So,
hilarious.
um, I'm actually really happy with how my team has been progressing because we've been very, very consistent over the past several raid nights. And so I am hopeful that we'll have the consistency tonight to actually like get multiple phase 4 pulls and and just take advantage of that strat to try and nail down a kill tonight. Um,
Yeah.
there's always like this is a boss like a lot of end bosses. I guess it's very easy to throw in this one. So it's entirely possible we could throw the night away. I really hope that does not happen. I would love to get the kill in tonight, partially because if we do not get the kill in tonight, it will like we're not a rankings focused guild, but I still pay attention to them. If we don't get the kill tonight, it's going to completely shatter our ranking. Like if we get the kill tonight, we'll be like US 120 something. If
Yeah.
we get the kill on Friday, we will be around like US 200 because of how
Yeah.
many kills are going to kill it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We raid Friday.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we'll talk about the nerfs a little bit later in the show, but yeah, this seems like another Halondrus, similar to like the
Yeah.
Halondrus nerfs that came in, where like, yeah, just there'll be tons of pulls for anybody or tons of kills for anybody who's
Yeah.
got at least a 100 150 pulls in
Yeah.
on
And
jailer at this point. So
the kind of story of our progression this tier for my team is we just keep like killing it the night after. And there's like we're approaching a kill on Anduin. We were really close to a kill. It just kind of threw a night away. And
yeah.
then the nerfs hit. We just went and killed it.
Yeah.
And so the same thing happened with Halondrus, of course. Like we were starting to get deeper into the fight, starting to get everything sorted out, getting through phase 2, and then just like nerf hammer.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would really like for that reason as well for us to get the kill tonight. Is beating this round of nerfs would be nice. Like obviously the boss has already been nerfed. This round of nerfs is intense.
Yeah. 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 So yeah, no, good. Definitely good luck for you, or good luck to you on the team. Hopefully, you guys get it. And I mean, to be fair, like I have zero contributions to my guild's kill, so I'm gonna ride their coattails to hopefully CE when we do get to
Right.
raid again. So
So kind of related then, I want to jump into Shadowlands Season 4 begins August 2nd.
yep.
So for North America, that is the Tuesday reset at the beginning of August. Europe starts August 3rd. China starts August 4th. That does not leave us very much time to get the rest of the raid their CE achievement. Like normally what we
Yeah.
would do is we would like kill the boss, take a week off, maybe 2 in this case because of like how long the tier has been, and
Yeah.
then go back and get people their CEs and get their mounts. Um, but we're not going to be able to get people their CE. Like we're gonna have to go right back in basically in order to try and get our last couple of people their cutting edge achievements because we only have like if we kill it tonight, we're gonna have 3 weeks before
Yeah.
CE is no longer available. And the first reclear, like it's been super heavily nerfed, more so than I think any tier that we've progressed. So it's entirely possible that we could just like speed run the instance
Yeah.
basically. But we can't bet on that, so we have to like plan to go back in fairly quickly to secure another round, another kill for the rest of our CEs.
Yeah. Yeah. That'll be the when we get back. I think I looked at the calendar. I have 2 resets basically to kill it. So
Gotcha.
Um, it'll be close. But yeah, season 4, we get the old Faded. What is it? Faded is the new affix, and the new Mythic
Yeah.
Plus is coming out. There's a couple other things I think which we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, season 4, August 2nd. They announced that. So that's when all the titles sort of lock into. So your Mythic Plus titles for season 3, and then your PvP titles for 3.
And I do want to
Um,
mention as well, because I brought up the mounts. The mounts from all tiers this expansion, I guess both Sanctum and Sepulcher, are going to be available in Season 4. So getting
mhm,
mounts is not an issue. Like, we have a bunch of time left till Dragonflight comes out to work on getting people their mounts. Um,
mhm.
and eye level is going up next year. As far as I know, faded is actually kind of opt in, so you can do a non-faded raid clear even if it's faded week.
Right. Yeah.
And that means that, for example, you can just take the higher eye level from next year and then be 30 eye levels over the raid and just do mount farms.
Yeah. Just dominate. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I'm wondering what our guild will do. I mean, I assume we'll go after some of the faded stuff just to sort of maybe just try it out. But
right.
I think we've always prioritized, even if we look back at like when there used to be multiple tiers with mount that dropped mounts that sort of stayed alive. We'd go back and farm those raids too.
Yeah,
Just to make sure like everybody got their mount.
we were doing Jaina
So
clears up until basically the end of BFA. Some of that was
yeah,
sales, like we were doing Jaina sales up until like the very end much. But there was
yeah,
also a lot of like getting new people to build their mounts, like Jaina runs. And some of that
yeah.
because it was super fast to do a Jaina run by the time we got to the end of
Well, once they
Nihilova,
added the
right?
skip, yeah,
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 once they added the skip and you could just like go straight to Jaina and uh use your corruption to just dumpster her. That was
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Where you actually kill the elemental at the end sometimes.
Yeah.
Instead of just keeping it alive. Yeah, that was a good
Yep.
time. Um, so cool. So I guess in other news, so season 4 coming up, but in other news, they did release the priest tree on Friday evening, or late afternoon Friday here on the East Coast. And yeah, I mean it's another talent tree that came out. This has been a month since they did the DK and druid trees. So priest is out now. Lots of discussion, we'll say, across the board, but um, looks to be more. I think we talked about this a little bit, where we heard some rumblings that like the DK tree was very much one of the first ones they did. Doesn't
Yeah.
really reflect their current methodology or current thinking of how they want to look at this,
Yeah.
which is like it's not just going to be like 3 disparate trees, one for each spec, right? And you can kind of cut across. This priest tree looks much more like the druid tree in that
Yeah.
it like there's a lot of overlap, a lot of ways to sort of get different places as you work on it and as you work through it. So no, it's interesting. I haven't really spent much time looking at it. To be fair, priest is probably one of the healers I know the least about.
Yeah.
Other than I know that PI still exists, so that's been
Yeah.
fun reading while Twitter.
That's
Um,
one of the things that has come out is PI still exists. There is, and you actually have to take PI to take priest grip, leap of faith.
yep,
And somewhere in here, there's here we go, Twins of the Sun Priestess. This is PI
on yourself.
on yourself when you give it to someone else. Is
Mhm.
part of the core tree, and you have to actually take that talent in order to go down and get like mind games. So
Yeah,
it seems reasonably likely that you're gonna end up like it's gonna feel less bad because you're gonna get to keep your PI and give it away.
yeah, exactly.
But there's still all of this stuff that people don't like about like rankings and such. PI is still gonna persist because I still exists.
Yeah,
So
as a spell. Yeah. But yeah, so I don't really have much to say on it other than just another class tree. So that leaves what? So we've gotten 3 of the 8 class. There's 8 classes in WoW now.
12.
There's 12
Gotta be
classes.
13. Yes.
Okay, I'm all okay. So we've gotten not even half of them, not even a quarter. Well, I guess just about a quarter of them. So with some of the other news coming out, and we'll talk about that in a second. I guess that's more of another topic. But with Dragonflight sort of getting closer and closer to actual release, they need to speed up these talent tree releases, um,
Yep.
just slightly.
Just slightly.
Um,
I wouldn't be surprised. Like I have to imagine that there's a bunch of them that they were working on. Like the DK one was obviously very early. The bear one was maybe a little bit farther along. The priest one, from my understanding, people like except for PI. Um,
yeah,
and I mean, even PI has its fans. They're usually not mythic raiders, but it has its fans, right?
yeah,
Um, and so I have to imagine that like in the past month they've taken a bunch of them from like kind of that DK state to where priest is. And so
yeah,
maybe we'll start getting like a talent tree a week or something until we hit alpha, or 2 talent trees a week until we hit alpha. Although who knows when alpha is, right?
Yeah. 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 Hopefully soon, we'll say. But yeah, priest tree's out. So if you play a priest, which I mean, I don't think you do either. Check it out. Hopefully we get a monk one shortly. Hope we're not the last class to get it like we typically are.
Yeah.
Um, so next up, still in the WoW world, but a little bit off the beaten path, is a little update on Wrath of the Lich King Classic. So they announced Wrath of the Lich King Classic coming at the end of this year, and they did a quick sort of post on some of the changes they're going to be making. One of those changes is they are going to make Naxx harder. So if you guys didn't play Wrath or didn't know that, at the start of Wrath, the first raid tier in Wrath was actually Naxx, Aramis. So they basically removed Naxx 40, the 40-man version that was the last raid in Classic, and moved it
To Northrend.
into Northrend,
Yeah.
basically. And it was the opening tier, and it was a joke. You literally could walk in there. It was almost like the LF. It was almost like LFR rating. To be fair, if you were any sort of organized group, you basically blew through that place very very quickly. There was no real progression. So they did make a post. They're going to buff the damage and health to some of the monsters in Naxx, making it just harder, which is a good thing because like it was funny. I remember like I Wrath is actually probably one of my if other than MOP, it's probably my second favorite expansion. So I'm actually
Yeah.
really excited to play. My shaman is level 68. So we are closing in on 70 to
Nice.
be ready.
Hey, my
Yeah.
rogue is up to level 59. I am in Hellfire Peninsula now. I did
Nice.
take a slight detour to go and level up my fishing and
Okay. Oh yeah.
so
I've
so
I've largely ignored professions, so
yeah.
it'll be fun to go back. But no, so I'm really excited about playing but playing this. Hopefully it doesn't sort of overlap too much with Dragonflight, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But no, good that they're up in the difficulty of Naxx
There's
for the
also
opening tier. So
so one last piece of context on that. Naxx and Wrath actually was nerfed from the relative scaling of Naxx in Classic. And that was intentional because Naxx in Classic didn't there was just not a lot of people that saw the raid. And so they wanted to
mhm.
make sure it was like accessible. And they just overdid it. They really
Yeah,
overdid it. So this is
yeah,
like less like it's gonna be still nerfed, maybe some from where Wrath the classic Naxx was, but not as severely. Basically, we don't have actual numbers yet, so we're guessing. But
yeah. But it'll be interesting to see exactly how hard it is. It'll be fun. Naxx is a fun raid, just in general. So, moving on to some probably non-specific WoW news, or sorry, non-specific sort of WoW news, but still does impact it. Is Blizzard announced the acquisition of a studio? So Proletariat Incorporated. That's how you say that. They were the main developers behind Spellbreak, which, if you don't know, was a battle royale where you picked up spells and you fought with spells instead of like guns or anything like that. I believe that was the game, right?
yeah, that's the game.
And so so yeah, so it was actually a really fun game if you haven't played it. But in any event, Blizzard picked them up and specifically to bolster the World of Warcraft team. So basically it's like 100 or so person studio. Blizzard picked them up just to sort of bolster their sort of their development team here for WoW, which is both good and bad news, we'll say. Um, it's good news that they have more people working on WoW, which is always good. It means that
Right.
they're still investing in the game. Bad news that they had to acquire an entire studio or felt they needed
Yeah.
to keep pace with what they're doing. So
On the one hand, like I don't know if I would say had to, right? Like they could go through the process of hiring, but hiring 100
yeah,
people is slower than acquiring a studio, right? This is
yeah,
like
that's true.
what they call acqui-hiring, like where
Yeah,
you acquire. This happens a lot with startups. You'll have a startup that gets acquired, and the sole purpose of acquiring it is to get the personnel. You want to
exactly.
hire the people, and it's just easier to acquire the startup than it is to hire them all individually.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's kind of what's happening here. I am really curious if we're gonna see this result in faster, more frequent patches next expansion.
No.
Because onboarding these people, like, it's gonna take time for them to actually get up to speed, so they're not gonna get to contribute as much to Dragonflight.
Yeah, probably to like the dot .0 and probably dot .1 release. They'll probably see limited involvement, right? But
Yeah.
like probably by dot .2,
Like that
they
one,
should be
I
fully
would
new.
say they probably have a decent bit of involvement, but like .0, like they're
Yeah,
gonna be dealing with the transition, dealing with slowly shutting down Spellbreak. Um,
yeah,
so they're gonna have less involvement in 10.0. I would
yeah,
guess. I would guess. I guess.
yeah. Yeah, so it's good news. John Haidt, who is the general manager of World of Warcraft, put out a blue post on like what it means and some of the corporate speak for why Blizzard's excited. So yeah, new studio, new manpower. They're still investing in WoW, so at least we'll get 10.0. Probably this means we'll get an 11.0 in a couple years. So good news on that front. Next up is Blizzard actually put out a blog post on the Halondrus bug and sort of what happened, which so I love this stuff personally. Like
Yeah,
I
this is
love
cool.
the behind the scenes, like exactly what happened or why it happened. I wish more companies or just in general more studios would do this in terms of like a bug that players notice and know about and what happened. So if you don't know, there was a visual bug on Halondrus where in phase 3 of Halondrus, the planet cracker beams and the bombs would essentially disappear. They wouldn't be rendered to the player in their game client. And so you would die to invisible world cracker beams, or planet cracker beams, I'm sorry. And you wouldn't be able to pick up the bomb or see the bombs. They just explode. And it took Blizzard, I mean, probably like, what is it, like 2 or so weeks to fully deploy a bunch of fixes. And so they give a nice little write up of exactly what happened. But the interesting thing is that the problem is they weren't able to reproduce the bug on their systems. Um, and they didn't know what was happening. And what they found was it was actually in the way that they apply the hot fixes or push the hot fixes out. Is
Yeah.
whatever code that packages up the hot fixes and sends it out to the CDN that eventually goes to the players was doing something that actually caused a render error in specifically the Halondrus encounter. So yeah, so everything they were doing, like the game data was all right, the game was all correct from their testing. Problem was they weren't actually receiving the hot fixes the same way players were, and so
Right.
they weren't seeing that issue.
Right. If you just
Um,
ran the game without, like, if you had the game, like, maybe if you downloaded it fresh after the breakage, right, it would have worked
yeah,
fine. Um, at least in their dev stuff where they're running it, they're not like getting a bunch of hot fixes to the base game. They're getting the game as it exists now.
yep,
The bug doesn't happen.
yeah,
So you had to go through the process of receiving some hot fixes in order to actually have the bug occur.
exactly, yeah. And they said it was actually a single server or single engineer was like the one that dove into it, which to be fair is probably how most of these issues get fixed
Well,
at Blizzard. It's like one person with like
it
a
was one person that
dog with a
was
bone.
one engineer was able to reproduce it because they had a machine that had the
Oh yeah,
hot fixes applied.
yeah.
So they were able to actually like debug it, and that's kind of
So
wild.
so funny. Yeah, so funny that like it was not even within the game itself, it was just the way they apply those hotfixes that caused the bug. Um so yeah, so that is the Halondrus thing. So read I would say, read the post for sure. It gives a little bit more detail than what we could talked about, but interesting behind the scenes look at exactly what was there. So next up is a couple of tuning, season 4 tuning pieces, particularly around the shrouded affix and some of the dungeon tuning that we'll talk about quickly. So shrouded, the only thing here is so if you remember shrouded, basically there are disguised mobs, and when you engage in combat, they'll turn into a dreadlord. When you defeat that dreadlord, you gain a stack of a buff, and you basically get to pick what stack of the buff you want at the start of a dungeon. It's either crit, haste, verse, or mastery. And every time you kill a dreadlord, you get another stack of it. They changed the versatility buff here. Rather than being 2% per stack, they reduce it to 1% per stack.
Yep.
So probably means that, I mean, I still think versatility is probably one of the correct choice for most classes, particularly as you push keys. Damage reduction is huge. Um, but
What
but yeah,
this
they reduce.
what this means is
Sorry.
that instead of it being 20% DR, when you get max stacks, which is going to take most of the dungeon run to get to max stacks. Instead of taking you to 20% damage reduction and 40% increase, it's going to take you to 20% increased damage and 10% damage reduction,
Yep.
which is a bit of a nerf.
Yeah. Yeah. Slight nerf. So yeah, and then they also did a tuning pass on Karazhan, Return to Karazhan, sorry, and Iron Docks in terms of the season, the Mythic Plus dungeons coming up. Various bosses got some damage adjustments, either increases or decreases, along with some trash tuning, particularly in Karazhan, which Karazhan trash is there's notably a lot of it, and notably it's somewhat difficult in certain spaces. So yeah, so you can, I mean, you can check out Wowhead or even the Blue Post for some of the hotfix notes there, but it looks like we're getting closer and closer to season 4, so they're sort of doing some fine tuning
Yep,
to those dungeons. So notably missing is Grimrail Depot in terms of tuning, just because that's the perfect dungeon. And I'm really excited to be doing that all
sure.
next season. Oh, oh man. All right, I think that's it in terms of stuff we want to talk about before we jump into our main topics today. I don't know if you had any final thoughts before we jump in there.
I want to hear real quick. Do you think we're going to get raid testing for the Fated Affixes before it goes live?
Oh, good question. No. No. I think they're just gonna let it fly and let it because I think what so my prediction, to be fair, is that oh gosh. Okay. So I was going to say the first Faded Affix week is going to be, they might not have announced this, so they did. I'm an idiot, but I would have assumed it was going to be Sepulcher, basically. So August 2nd, Sepulcher being
I
the
don't.
thing.
I
But
don't think they
I,
announced it, but we can find out.
I think as we sort of talk through this, it might make better sense for them to just leave to turn Faded on
That's
for
on that
Castle
3.
Nathria.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did not announce it, as far as I can tell.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I
Yeah, I
hope
can
it's
see it
not
got
Sepulcher first. I hope they do like Castle Nathria Sanctum Sepulcher, Castle Nathria Sanctum Sepulcher. Like
yeah.
that
Yeah, in
gives
that
us a
order.
nice at least 2 week break from Sepulcher. Or go back in there.
What do you mean? We're farming mounts. We'll be in there all the time. Hopefully, we'll have the skip by
At
then, which
least
honestly
so
doesn't skip anything. So dumb. Sorry.
one of the really nice things that Blizzard did in BFA was making it so all the mounts it just drops 2 instead of 1.
Yeah.
That makes it so much easier to get everybody their mounts. Like everybody on our team already had that raided with us in Sanctum. Even during farm has the Sylvanas mount already.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. We got to the point where like we have one member of our raid team that it's a thing with him, but he will not learn end boss mounts. He probably has every end boss mount since they started dropping in his bags. And he'll typically trade it away if he gets it early.
mm.
And yeah, he even got one, which is funny.
uh,
So still unlearned in his bag though, I can tell you that. So but yeah, I don't think we get raid testing. I don't know about you, and I think we see Nathria first. The more I sort of put a little thought into it, I think we see Nathria first. Um so yeah.
I think that's most likely. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess on to our main topic. So we've sort of hinted at a couple things coming up. We'll talk about the nerfs here in a couple of minutes. I'll probably be what we wrap up with. There's some cool trade stuff happening, auction house stuff happening in
I forgot about that. Yeah.
9.2.7 or 9.2.7, which is the season 4 patch, I believe.
Yep.
And then also the big news, sort of we'll kick this off with, is they released Dragonflight pre-orders. So they threw up this week the pre-order for Dragonflight, all the same. So it's the typical. You have your 3 levels. You have your standard version, your version that has a couple extra things, and your version that has everything. Um, and so yeah, so put up Dragonflight pre-orders with the fun text that said the game will be released on or before December 31st, 2022. So by the end of this year, We will be playing Dragonflight, they say, which seems soon.
We
Like
don't have
seems
alpha. It's July.
very
We're like less than 6 months away from this release date.
yeah.
Yeah. Um, I don't know what like. So the other thing that goes with this, before we get any further, there
Mhm.
was also a 10.0 patch pushed to the CDN testing branch. So we talked a little bit about CDN stuff before, and basically what this means is that they're pushing something up to the testing branch to be able to do internal tests. Uh,
Yep.
Run 10.0 patch with tests. This doesn't mean the alpha is ready to start right away. It does mean that like they're approaching the point that you could actually like run 10.0, like log in and like do new content and like that, because otherwise there's no reason to do this kind of deployment.
Yep.
Um,
Mhm.
so who knows?
We'll see. Well, yeah, I mean, we'll see what they're doing. I think um, like I think they typically have taken about like probably 7 or 8 months once alpha goes to the public to like release the expansion.
Yeah,
So the the idea that this one it's already July and they're gonna get this out by the end of the year seems tight. I think the other thing that some people have referenced though is like based on what they've actually announced for Dragonflight, there's not a lot of like brand new things coming with Dragonflight,
systems
right?
system stuff is notably absent. Yeah,
Like the biggest thing is going to be the talent revamp, which like they're slowly getting out. We're hopefully going to be have a ton of time to test that, but there's not a like Azerite armor system that's brand new or like islands that are sort of totally new and how they're
yeah.
doing things.
It's like there's the
Um,
dragon writing, which
Dragon,
is new,
yep,
and there's the talent stuff that you mentioned,
yep,
and there's the trade skill revamps.
yep,
And then other than that, it's just an extra large content patch. It's got, raid 4 or 5 outdoor zones. Whereas like normally when we get like a raid patch, right? It's a raid and an outdoor zone and maybe a dungeon.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
guess
So
that's the other thing, 8 dungeons.
yeah,
So
yeah. So I
um
mean, there's a lot of stuff there, but there's not a lot of like systems, which typically are the things they want to put the most time into testing, right?
yeah.
Um, and typically the things that they want the most feedback on, because like it's easy to not well, it's easier to I think do dungeon tuning or do like tuning and counter tuning, I guess you could say, just across the board. Much
Yeah.
more difficult to like change a system like Azerite, which they never did. Well, which they
I
slowly
mean,
did and
yeah.
basically
The
made it
Azerite
a
system didn't get like beta tested basically until like 2 weeks before the expansion.
yeah, yeah, which is a
Um
good time.
Yeah, great time, great
Um,
time. There's still there's still years later pins in the brewmaster like moderator chat from when I was doing the all the math and sims for the defensive brewmaster traits for Azerite armor,
yeah.
where I did it all and then they like reworked it all and then I did it all again and they reworked it all a second time.
Oh, geez, that's
Great,
hilarious.
great.
Yeah. No, they yeah, so yeah, so Dragonflight it pushed the CDN, which I think is huge. It means we're getting closer to like external testing, and then yeah, they announced all the the pre-order. They also have a physical collector's edition that's out,
Yep.
which is funnily enough, you can. I thought this might be the first time they're doing this. I don't know, but if you get like the digital version of the game and then buy the collector's edition, they actually will refund you the difference, right? I think the
Yeah.
expansions are like 30 or $40, and if you buy the collector's edition, you get that money off of it, so you can
Yeah.
still play day one versus having to wait for them to ship you a key with all the stuff. So
Yeah. I don't usually buy the physical ones. That is a neat thing. I'm still probably not going to buy the physical one.
no, I thought it's funny. I there was a split second where I'm like, maybe I'll do the physical version, but I think I would have wanted to start with like original WoW. Like if I had bought the collector's edition of the original
Yeah.
game and like the collector's edition of BC, I probably would have kept doing like the physical copy stuff
Yeah.
just because I think it's cool to own all of them. I don't know. I wouldn't want to start now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also just not a collector. It's not like I've
Yeah, with like
played,
physical things. Yeah.
yeah, I've
Yeah.
played like Magic and stuff like that. And when I play Magic, I'm not a collector. I still have a collection, but it's like the cards that I actually used. not like
Yeah.
collecting for the sake of collecting.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
so I guess we're all on Alpha Watch now, but you can
ah,
pre-order your fun. I will say the just one real quick, the reward or like the additional stuff you get for like some of the high, I guess it's like the epic version of the game. The mount I think is actually really cool.
yep.
It's like a green dragon, but it's like got tree stuff growing on it. That's really cool. The pets are always fun. Um,
And you get a level
and
60
you get
boost.
yeah, you do get a level 60 boost, which is nice. And oh, you get dragon wings, transmoggable.
Yep.
They replace your cloak. They're not animated, which is a downside. I think they look very stiff.
Yeah.
I of course purchased like whatever the most expensive digital one was because I like that stupid pet stuff.
Yeah.
Just
Yep.
say I have it, but no, yeah. The mount itself is actually really cool. So
Yep.
um,
I now have a level. I am. I won't say morally opposed to boosts because I've used boosts before,
yeah.
but at one point in time, I had like 4 max level boosts sitting on my account unused.
Yeah. I typically use mine on the dumbest thing.
Yeah.
So I have a bunch of like max level characters only logged into once on various servers because I'm like, oh yeah, maybe I'll play on this server with some of my friends.
And
Like
then they all
after I level
quit.
my main. They either all quit or in to be fair, a lot of them just moved to my server that I'm
Yeah.
playing on anyway. Cause they're like,
Yeah.
you'll end up playing this the longest, so we'll just move to you. And I'm like, cool. So I've wasted this. Awesome.
Nice.
Um, but yeah, no,
It's
yeah,
yeah.
it's
I
funny.
think I used a bunch of my max level boosts to level tanks. Like I switched servers, I didn't want to level a second time, and didn't want to pay for transfers while I already had these new character or these character boosts. So I just boosted characters, and now all of those are on actually my old realm. So, uh, but that was during BFA that I did that.
That's
So
awesome. That is awesome. Um, but cool, yeah. So Dragonflight's got at least a end release date, which is by the end of this year it'll be out. That's sort of why I also mentioned Wrath is sort of releasing generally at the same time this fall too. Wrath Classic, so a little
yeah,
bit of overlap, which sort of
I
sucks.
I suspect this is my guess. I guess my prediction will say. We'll see
Yep.
if I'm right. We've got the Wrath release window within. I don't know if we have a specific day or within just a month. I
Yeah.
believe it's September. Of
Yeah.
September this year. Um, I think we will see a end of November release date for Dragonflight. End of November, beginning of December. And
Yeah.
the reason for that is that lets them get through Wrath launch, lets people play Naxx Ramus, level up, play Naxx Ramus, get mostly done, and then just jump straight into Dragonflight. Like they get through Naxx, they start getting a little bit bored, and it's like, all right, Dragonflight's out now.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that too. And it does give them a little bit of a like what's gonna suck though, and I feel like we just went through this with another raid release, is like the only problem with early December or late November releases is like raid release time is like right over the holiday. So it's like if you play retail, there's like you basically level and like you're doing dungeons because like your half your raid team is traveling or away
Yeah,
or you know what I mean? Like doing
yeah,
stuff for the holidays there. So
that's kind of rough, but it's also like I would rather have the new expansion before the holidays than after, right?
oh yeah, true. True.
So Berthier in chat says Naxx Ramus is going to be harder this time. Yes, we did talk about that. Naxx Ramus is getting buffed. From my conversations with the people that do like speed runs in TPC Classic, even like with a 30% buff to just flat damage and health buff to the entire raid, they're still gonna have people like speed running it the moment it opens. Will regular old like they call them dad guilds be speed running it the moment it opens? No. And they didn't speed run Sunwell the moment it opened either.
Yeah.
But they did clear it pretty quickly. Like the rate at which people cleared Sunwell is dramatically higher in TPC Classic than in original TPC. Like it was a guild breaker in original TBC, and this time around, like people know
Yeah.
what they're doing, and people do wipe Tomuru. That's for sure. I think we don't have stats on that on Warcraft Flag, so I'm pretty sure if we did stats on like how many wipes people had per boss, that would be the outlier.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Um,
typically the wall. Yeah. Or
and
was the wall.
uh, they clear it like all the time. And so with Wrath Classic, like people again, like just being so much more knowledgeable, having weak auras and things like that. Like imagine doing what's the boss where you have to do the safety dance?
Hygen, yeah.
Yeah, you do Hygen, and this time like people have a weak aura that tells them how to do the safety dance, right?
Yeah. God, Hygen's the first WoW fight I had with someone over voice, with my raid leader actually, where like it was so I guess we'll tell a little story because we have a little time, I think. But the way Hagen worked is like, so you had to do the dance, right? But there was also, if you don't know, there's also a tunnel that 3 or 4 players got teleported to that had a bunch of like eye stalks that mind flayed you.
Right.
You have to basically run down the tunnel and get back to the group before the dance started, before the next part of the mechanic. And like there was always this like, what we found, and people didn't realize this, was that there was always one portal that Hagen did where like she would, or he, I don't know if it was a he or she, but the boss would portal a set of players late, meaning like basically like 10 seconds before the dance started. Those players were dead no matter what. And my raid leader went off on me and one other person, like, why can't you like run? Like you can stun the eye stalks, don't kill them, like move quickly, do more
Yeah.
damage, all this fun stuff. And I'm like, look at this video. I was like, I had 12 seconds from the time I got ported to run back. Even if I didn't touch anything, I would still not make it. And like we got in this fight for probably like 10 minutes. He never
Beautiful.
said I was right. Um, and to this day, Mr. Ore, you were wrong. So yeah.
And this is why
But in
you're
any
called
event,
pals for life.
exactly. Yeah, well, actually, we don't talk much. After a couple other incidents. So yeah, so in any event, yeah, Naxx will be harder, but yeah, still shouldn't be too much of an issue. But it's nice that it's not the true pushover it was, even at the start of original Wrath.
Yeah.
Um, cool. So here's a big topic. I think you got, I think maybe slightly excited about, but stuff coming inside of patch 9.2.7. So regardless of season 4 coming, there's some auction house changes coming. The biggest one is that commodities, such as herbs and flasks and things like that, will now be region wide versus server wide. So a couple of expansions ago, they actually combined the Horde and Alliance auction houses on one server.
Yep.
So you basically saw the same thing. No really need to use the neutral auction houses anymore to transfer stuff or to
In fact, the
transfer
neutral
stuff.
auction houses just became another auction house, right?
Auction
Like
houses,
you
yeah,
could go to Gadget Stand and just use the auction house.
yeah, exactly. But now what the Blizzard's doing with 9.2.7 is they are now basically creating region-wide commodities auction houses. So gems, herbs, flasks, consumables, all that type of stuff will now be region-wide. So you will post herbs, and anybody in your region, so North America, Europe, Asia, will be able to buy those. And the biggest thing here is this will almost undoubtedly help smaller servers.
Yeah.
So I think we talked about this as like one of the driving forces for you guys to transfer was the lack of just materials to make legendaries, or just lack of materials in general to raid
Yeah.
on your server.
Yeah.
So
Legendaries were the big one just because of the incredibly high materials requirements for getting a highly high ranked legendary. Um, but yeah, commodities in general were more expensive on Australian than they are in Area 52. So like it's been a continued like net gold gain from playing on a bigger server. And in particular in 9.0, when we were trying to do legendaries, we got to the point that we could craft all of our guild's rank 2 legendaries and then just ran out of mats. Like there weren't materials on the server, on the auction house. We could not buy them. So the only option was basically we had two options. One option was to require people to go out and grind bare asses to get leather. And option
oh yeah.
two was to do guild bank transfers from the large servers to Turalian. Because the large servers had not just materials, but cheap materials, cheaper than Turalian. So, and then that progressed to being, well, the big servers also just have rank 4s. So if we're going to do that, why spend all the gold to level through rank 3 to reach rank 4 when we could just buy the rank 4 legendary? So that's what happened. We just
Yeah.
like get guild bank transfers of rank 4 legendaries from places like Area 52 and Illidan in order to get our legendaries in 9.0. because that was cheaper.
Yeah, which
And
is crazy.
if if we had had this, if just materials had been region wide, that wouldn't have been an issue. Legendaries
Yeah.
would still have been too expensive. Like just flat out still have been too expensive. But we had tons of gold in the guild bank from doing sales in Nyalotha, which is how we did the guild bank transfers.
Hmm.
Um, so we could have still at that point afforded just buying materials and crafting the legendaries and leveling it up. And like maybe now I actually might go and finish up leveling the rank fours and do that. I don't know if I'm going to because it's still like pretty expensive. But
Yeah.
especially after all the nerfs to the crafting costs, I might actually do it now. But yeah, like we ended up transferring from Turalian to Area 52 for Sepulcher. And we did that because of the continued costs of legendaries, basically. Like legendaries were the driving force. We got a cheaper feast in 9.2, so that wasn't really like food wasn't an issue. There were
Hmm.
enough herbs that like flasks and potions weren't really an issue. They were more expensive, but not by that much. And some of them were actually less expensive. Um, it was legendaries. It was just like going and looking at it and going, we're going to be doing guild bank transfers again, but this time, like in 9.0 and 9.1, we did guild bank transfers kind of on the back of um, sales infrastructure, like cross realm
Yeah.
sales. And with the cross realm sales ban, a lot of that stuff shut down. Like the
Right.
person that was doing the guild bank transfers was doing them as part of a sales community. So they were just like basically using space in the guild bank that was already being transferred
Yeah.
or being transferred, and we like effectively space in it and they were double dipping in it. And 9.2, it was like, well, we're gonna have to do the guild bank transfers ourselves with no sales to recoup the costs. And so we just ended up basically paying out of pocket. We used some guild bank gold, we used some like personal gold, some personal money to just like do mass transfers.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. To get them.
all of that could have been avoided if legendaries weren't so insanely expensive in the first place. But it also could have been avoided if we had a cross realm or yeah, cross realm commodities auction house.
Yeah.
So I do want to mention as well, like I've been saying commodity a lot. There's a distinction in the auction house right now. You can go, I don't want to load it up in game right now, but you can go and you can look at different items, and there's two different kinds of things, two different UIs that show. If you go and you pull up like a potion, that's a commodity. There's a UI that just shows you, it doesn't let you buy specific ones. It just shows you like here's all of the potions that are listed. And you enter the amount that you want to buy in a box and you hit buy and that's it. You're done. And then there are non-commodities, like individual items. This is where you go to like you look at a legendary precursor or you look at a bind on equip item, like actual gear. That stuff is or crafted items are a good example. You go and you click on one of those and it gives you a list of all of them with all like for crafted gear there's all the different like stats that can be on it, the different bonus like crafting bonuses that can be on it and all of that stuff. um and you can buy an individual one. You don't have to buy the cheapest one, you don't have to buy the one that is at the top. You can go through the list and like just buy, you know, the one specifically that has the stats you want or the bonus that you want. And that is not going to be cross realm. That is still going to be per realm.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
But it's going to be a lot easier if you just want to like if you're on a small realm, you're going to be more. It's going to be more realistic to just craft things yourself
Yeah.
because you will be able to afford the commodities, afford the leather and the cloth and the ore and all of the stuff that goes into crafting that stuff. It's this is a huge net positive. It's not good. There's one group of people that it's not good for, and that is the auction house goblins. It will now be literally impossible to do a price reset on a commodity.
Ooh, well, maybe, maybe not.
Well, I mean, the amount of gold that would be required to effectively do a price reset is insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like many
Yeah.
many times gold cap to do it across all because you have to reset all servers in the region at once effectively.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So it'll
Um,
be multiple gold caps worth of probably material to do it, but
and just the rate at which stuff is going to be posted. Like There's,
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
60 or something servers in the North American region, and just people constantly like posting new stuff means that resetting I don't think is practically going to be possible. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I they're they can suck it up because this is a huge benefit for literally everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. No, it'll be huge. So I mean, to be fair, I do not buy anything off the auction house anymore, really. Mostly I post it. I just run mission tables and anything extra I get I post. So but no, this will be good for, yeah, like we said, all the smaller servers and stuff like that. So um the other thing coming along with this change from an auction house perspective is Blizzard is changing the trade chat. So the trade chat channel that's a part of servers, they're basically adding another channel called trade services. So right now, trade chat, if you have it on a larger server, it's a ton of spam, particularly around people selling either it's like people selling items, people selling like services, boosts, all that fun stuff, right? And now what they're doing is they're actually adding a trade chat to split that. So like basically the new trade chat will be for any sort of raid or dungeon activities, meaning like if you want to sell boosting people through a dungeon, like Mythic Plus, or if you want to sell like a raid, raid drops, stuff like that, you'll have a new channel in the UI to do that from, where the original trade chat will probably stay, or would stay for things like profession trading, selling sort of raw material, stuff like that, if you want to do that through there. So
Yeah,
another change that Blizzard is making just from a UI perspective.
this is another good one. It's going to mean that people that aren't interested in buying stuff can just like opt out of this channel. Like I don't buy sales. Like I just
No.
don't. I've run sales. I don't buy sales. I'll run it with my guild, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah.
um I would opt out of this. And there's an interesting thing here. So the good actors, the people acting in good faith, are gonna opt out of are going to use this channel. They're gonna post in this channel, they move it out of trade chat. The spam bots are probably not, because people are going to be opting out of this channel. And they're already gonna get banned anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So they don't care. But what this does mean is that there's now an avenue for very quickly identifying the like bad actors and getting them muted, because they're going to be posting in trade, and now this kind of chatter is banned in trade chat.
Yeah.
Like you have to post it in the trade services section. Um, they did also, like, I want to reiterate one thing that you did mention, but I want to reiterate it. Trade chat is for the buying and selling of items and professions. So if you're like, you know, blacksmith, looking for work kind of thing, that still goes in the existing trade chat. That's professions. It's just the sales basically of raids, dungeons, PvP that goes in trade services section.
Yep. Yeah. So that is yeah. So that is the one change they made to the UI from a chat channel perspective. So I mean, a couple of good changes, I'd say. I mean, to be fair, it's funny. 9.2.7, I think, is turning into probably a very good weird patch for them, right? Like
Yeah,
like the auction house, even like regardless of the other stuff that's coming out, right? Like the new season 4 affixes and like the idea of the Mythic Plus refresh and stuff like that. That's all cool, but even this auction house stuff is really good. Like I mean, this might go down as the best patch in
like
whatever in
one of the best
Shadowlands.
patches in it, one of the best minor patches
Yeah, in a while.
in modern WoW. Yeah, this is just a bunch of stuff that's been a long time coming. Like 9.2.5 was also a really good like minor patch.
Yeah.
So yeah, very.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be nice. It's gonna be really nice.
Exactly. So now, I guess we get into our final topic of the day. More nerfs, more massive nerfs to Sepulcher. I feel like literally we've said this
Every
every
single
week.
time. Yeah.
Like it's been like a month straight of Blizzard just like cutting bosses down, which I think I mean before we get into the nerfs, I think I'd wanted to talk a little bit just about like the timing of this. We've said I think a couple times just on the podcast, like this is a very long tier, just in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah.
Like it's multiple 100+ pull bosses, which is something you generally don't see. Like typically it's like the last boss and maybe one other boss that you'll hit 100+ pulls. In this case, it was Halondrus before the massive nerfs. It was Anduin. It was
Yeah,
Ragallon. It was the Jailer, of course. And so, like, it just in terms of like the amount of wipes and the amount of time you're going to put in this raid, it was long already. I mean, we talked about it too. I think 2 weeks ago, we were like,
yeah,
this was Sanctum, we would have been killing Jane or killing, sorry, Sylvanas
right.
like 2 3 weeks ago.
This is
Um,
right now. We are in week 17 of Mythic.
just crazy long,
Over
crazy
4
long.
months of Mythic progression. And like I mentioned earlier, if my team kills it tonight, we will be in the US 120s. Like that is, I don't know what that corresponds. I can actually pull up our team. Our,
World like
our
400, 500 ish or something, right?
yeah, it's crazy. It's just like completely different from every tier prior. Where like this tier, yeah, if we kill it right now, we'll be like world 400. Which is a huge jump from where we were in like Sanctum, where it's like world 600, right? For killing it week 13.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's definitely has not been cleared as much, and I think the other thing too is season 4 just seems coming quick, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I
so,
think August is in line with our predictions.
yeah,
I think that we are. Well, let's get into these nerfs because there's some big ones, and
yeah,
then we can talk about like the scale of the overall nerfs to the instance.
yeah, yeah. So, we'll run through these top to bottom. So, and the other thing too, the interesting part about these nerfs too is that these aren't just to Mythic, right? Like there are
Yeah,
nerfs to all difficulties, which is crazy.
there
So,
are a bunch of actually like heroic guilds that are still working on AOTC, and like
yeah,
that's not like no shade. Like the jailers kind of adapt are just kind of
exactly.
it's hard in a way that is not really typical for a heroic fight as well. It's very one shotty, which is normally a mythic thing. Like one shotty stuff is much more the realm of mythic. Like you do the mechanic right or you die.
Right. Yeah.
Because of the holes, there's a whole lot of just like you do the mechanic right or you die, even in heroic and normal.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So no, it is a ton of nerfs to basically all of the different difficulties. So let's sort of look through this a little bit. So the first thing up is Anduin, of course. And so Anduin, basically Anduin's Hope and Anduin's Doubt, which are the Healy and damage adds down phase. They had their health again reduced by 20% on heroic and normal difficulties. So another 20% health reduction, which is big. They've also reduced the movement speed of Anduin's Hope by 15% on heroic and normal, meaning you now have to heal less and you have more time to heal, which is good.
Yeah.
And they've also reduced the damage of Grim Fate on Mythic difficulty from 200% to 150%. Grim Fate is this is the phase, this is the final phase circles, right? Or am I thinking of something different?
I actually don't know because he didn't specify. I'm thinking that's actually the uh cast speed buff that the ads in phase 2 get. But I'm actually pulling up the
Oh, right.
dungeon journal now because I don't remember and I want to find out. I think it might be the cast speed thing.
Oh,
Let's see, where's Mythic? Right? That's
oh, right. It's when you kill one, it's the empowerment of the others. It's the haste
yeah.
buff. You're right. The cast speed buff. Yep.
Okay.
You're right. Yeah, so they reduced the haste then of the ads, the big ads
Which
on
just
Anduin. So
makes like when you get to the fourth one, right? Instead of it being at 600% increased cast speed, it's now going to be at 450%, which is still
yeah,
fast, but it takes the cast down from like a 10-second cast or whatever, or an 8-second cast. Instead of it
yeah,
being like a 0.7-second cast, it's going to be like a 1.5-second cast, which is very reasonable to actually just kick.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, so that is the nerfs on Anduin, which are, I mean, they'll definitely help the normal heroic guilds, right? Deal with the ad phases, which is probably one of the more difficult things to coordinate.
Yeah, and
Um,
the Grim Fate
but
change will make Mythic less frustrating. I'm actually like that change is going to be nice for us doing reclears, right? because
Yeah.
that's one of the very annoying things is like you get to the end of phase 2 and then someone just like misses their re-stun of the Grim Fate or the Grim Reflection, and you
Yeah.
just get feared and die.
Yeah. Just sucks.
Yeah.
Next up is Lords of Dread. They had a health nerf to the boss on all difficulties, so 10% less health on Lords of Dread just speeds that fight up. Ever even more. And then also the Swarm of Decay and Swarm of Darkness damage was reduced by 15% on heroic difficulty. So the intermission phase damage has been reduced, which is
That damage
just
was
less
still
damage.
super high for heroic. Like
Yeah,
pugs were already doing Ragolon first, and I usually didn't stick around for Lords of Dread because the boss doesn't while I'm
yeah,
tugging it. But um, just like the damage on it was still really high. You would have people that would like 4 heal, like a pug would 4 heal Ragolon, and they'd go to Lords of Dread and they'd 6 heal it, right?
yeah. Yeah, those intermission phases still a ton of damage. So good nerfs gets guilds over the hump. Particularly, I mean, the health nerf will help if you're still progressing to Lords of Dread
Yeah,
on Mythic. Ragolon also received similar nerfs. Boss health reduced by 10% on all difficulties for Ragolon. This basically now puts it where you can probably lose a person or two
yeah,
over the course of Ragolon and not, at least on Mythic, and not be sort of super tight on the enrage. I think this is
yeah.
probably a second or third health nerf at this point to this boss. So,
Yeah, I think it's the
um,
I think it's the third one because they did
yeah,
one when they also fixed the Warlock thing, and they did a
yeah,
second one to compensate for the Warlock thing, and this would be the third one.
yeah. And then also the damage of Dark Eruption was reduced by 75% on heroic difficulty. Dark Eruption is the tank, is like the soak, right?
No, that's dark. So this is the Dark Eclipse thing where you get Dark
Okay,
Eclipse on you and you don't go in a hole.
gotcha.
The normal mode already has this nerf, and what it means is that now you you're more able to get through the fight without people messing up Dark Eruption. It's still going to kind of truck. If you have multiple
Yep.
people miss, you'll still probably lose people and die. But it's not like one person messing it up is gonna wipe the raid. Like it already isn't quite there. It does like 80% of your health now if you get it wrong. Instead, it's now gonna be, do like 20 or 25% of
Yeah, yeah. So not again gets those guilds, those heroic guilds, still progressing kind of over the hump for those mess ups, right? Where you just miss a
yeah.
hole. Um, it's not an instant wipe. So
And like the just as like to confirm that there are in fact people like progressing this on heroic. I have been pugging a decent bit on my mage, and I have been looking for Ragolon to try and get Antumbra, the dagger.
okay, yeah.
And I see pretty consistently when I look on like Tuesday, Wednesday, like Ragolon progression listings for heroic.
Not bad, not bad.
So this
Yeah,
is like there are guilds in this situation for heroic, and it's just like the raid was doing really high, and the last several bosses like Anduin, Ragolon, and the Jailer really had kind of mythic-ish mechanics, even on heroic.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But again, makes it easier. Makes it, you know, hopefully that it helps people get over the hump. Um,
So
and
let's
cool.
talk about the Jailer.
I'm so excited about these. I'm
Oh my
so
god!
excited.
All right, so
Uh,
right off the top, health reductions. Heroic and normal get 15%. Mythic gets 10%.
yep, yeah, which
That
is massive. Like
yeah,
10% health. Basically, I think you talked about your strat where you get like limited, mechanics. Like you kill it before the first set of ads that spawn right in phase 4. Like this
yes,
is easily you lust and you might even kill the boss before lust is over in phase 4.
yeah. So it is still worth noting that like the push into phase 4 is percent based. So you still push in at
Yep.
15%. So really this is like 1.5% less in phase 4, but it means that you're going to get to phase 4 a lot sooner. Like you're
Yeah.
getting to phase 4 significantly sooner. This probably means that you don't have to heal the boss at all in phase 3, where normally now you have to heal him once or heal Azerite once, Azeroth once. But then there's the next change. Azerite radiation increased from 3% damage gain per stack to 7% damage gain per stack. So I was talking about like we're doing this thing in phase 3 where we go to 3 stacks, then we refresh that to 6 stacks, and that's 24% damage increase. And we carry that over, and the goal is to refresh it right before we go into phase 4, so that we have 30 seconds in phase 4 of having a 24% damage increase while we have Bloodlust going. That
Yep.
24%, instead of being 24%, is now going to be 42% increased damage. 42% increased damage. So what this means is we're likely going to also start seeing speed stress. This is not going to be a progression thing, I don't think, because
Yeah.
the damage on Azerite radiation is still pretty significant. Even there's nerfs to that too that we'll get to in a second. But what we will likely see is people carrying a 6 stack of Azerite radiation throughout most of the fight in order to do 42% damage increase just the whole way through. Skip virtually all of phase 2 and phase 3, and then get into phase 4 and just like push Bloodlust and kill the boss.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you'll see a lot more probably 6 stacks in P1, right? Like you'll be able to
Yeah,
maybe run like 2 sets of 6 stacks in P1.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, and just dominate the boss. So yeah, that's huge. And maybe we'll skip a little bit ahead, but yeah, they're also reduce the damage of surging Azerite
yep,
by 15% on Mythic. So you can take those 6 stacks more safely.
yep.
Just in terms of taking less damage, you're getting those stacks up. So yeah, so it's a big change. And also this is we talk about damage. This is also a healing increase too. So this affects
Okay,
it's
yeah,
it's also healing in the same idea. The buff is a damage and healing increase. So it's now you're doing
okay,
almost 24, what do you say, 42% additional healing, which again, with the other nerfs that they've done in terms of damage, makes the healing requirement. I mean, I was
yeah,
talking to a couple people in my guild, like you may actually see like a if in extreme cases like a 3 heal, maybe even a 2 heal type setup
yeah.
on this boss.
I
So
wouldn't be surprised if you're like doing some kind of speed strat shenanigans and like carrying a 6 stack the whole way through and skipping
yeah.
a lot of mechanics. So the way the boss pushes is at 60% he will force push from phase 1 into phase 2, and then at 30% he will force push into phase 3, and then at 15% he pushes into phase 4. So if you're carrying this debuff through, you can force push him into phase 2 at 60%, and then force push him into phase 3 at 30%, and then force push him into phase 4 at 15%, and just like cut out. Like, we are already at the point with the other nerfs that they've been in that we are missing like half of the phase 3 that the first kills did, right?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
So and we're pushing into phase 3 at like 42%. That's our target in order to do the push we want. Taking 12% off of that, like you're gonna do like one set of blood soaks. You're not even gonna get the phase 3 torment if you
Yeah.
are executing that correctly.
Yeah.
Um so yeah, I would not be surprised to see like 2 heal like 6-minute kills or something.
Yeah. Yeah, which would be crazy. Couple other changes we sort of work through this. Domination is now triggered at 3 stacks of tyranny versus 2 stacks. This is of course whenever it's the lines that come from the holes after you close them.
Yeah.
Typically you couldn't have another player over your line, you got mind controlled. Now you can at least eat one other line other than your
Yeah.
own, and not get mind controlled, which just limits those like we would lose people to this all the time of just like having
Yeah.
people not move enough and get too stacked up. Our tank would get hit a lot of the a
Oh
lot
my
of
god.
times because
So
the tank gets rooted when
yeah, that
the
happens
soak
with
goes
us
off.
too. We
So
That was probably our
yeah,
number one individual source of deaths, aside from like raid wipes at the end of
yeah,
phase 3. On Friday, it was just like tyranny, either on me while I'm rooted, like
yep,
twice it happened, and or as we transition into phase 2 when there's 18 lines out and just like an absolute clusterfuck.
yeah, yeah. So this gives you a little bit of wiggle room. You can eat a line from another player, not get mind controlled, which will help. Yeah, those type of wipes. Um,
But wait,
the
there's
next
more.
So we're not done yet. Decimator no longer includes a knockback on heroic or mythic. So Decimator is when the jailer like throws out his like flail, whatever. If there's a
Yeah,
circle, you have to dodge it. But it used to knock back, and there was a couple of timings in phase 2 and phase 3 where like you'd get torment, get knocked back, so you didn't want to get knocked in other torments or open holes. Removing this just literally makes those overlaps not like, and the damage Decimator did already wasn't high. So this now becomes a like, don't stand in the big blue circle and
Yeah.
you get past it type of, it's a
Yeah.
non-factor now, I'd say.
This is huge. Like this is
Yeah.
huge. This is gonna make phase two so much easier, like you said. It is actually kind of weirdly gonna make phase three slightly harder because if you're doing it now, what you do is you get
Oh
knocked
yeah.
towards your defile bait. Now you just gotta like walk to your defile bait like a plebeian.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, it's not really making it harder. You're gonna have to like actually, but it's like
The phase two
you,
wipes now are, you'll never see those,
yeah,
which will be good.
but like those torment decimator overlaps that you were talking about, those are rough. Those took us a pretty good chunk of time to figure out like how we are supposed to like spread, and now we're actually doing it well. I was really happy with it on Friday. Like I said that to our raid after we finished raid for the night. Like I was
Yeah.
really happy because our torment placement was like consistent, so we could do consistent things with the decimator. It was really nice. Um,
Yeah.
this is going to give you a lot more flexibility to just kind of like YOLO torments around and just not die to the decimator and be fine.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that'll be nice. We already talked about the damage reduction on Surging Azurite. Um, they also upped the heal from Surging Azurite from 4% a tick to 5% a tick. This will be good because it'll help alleviate some wipes or maybe like you miss a tick or two
Yeah,
over the course of trying to heal Azurite over phase one and phase two,
it,
which we'd lose a couple of wipes to that.
yeah.
So
This it actually doesn't heal for 4%.
I know it's like, isn't it? It's like
It's
three or something. Like
3.5. It's either
yeah,
3.3 or 3.5.
yeah.
So this is definitely like a rounding thing. So I think it actually is 3.5. Like maybe just round it up. So maybe this goes to 4.5, or maybe it goes to actual 5, and we will know on Tuesday, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
there's a weird rounding, yeah, with that.
um, so yeah, we'll find out on Tuesday. But that's a pretty big change either way. Like you said, just removing a couple of wipes to missing Azeroth heal ticks. Um, Then we have nerfs to all three runes that you get in the fight. So there's three different kinds of runes. In phase one, you have Rune of Damnation. This is the one where you jump in the hole. And the damage on that is going down by 15%. And that's pretty big because actually one of the easiest ways to wipe in phase one is for somebody to mess up their bomb and just like bomb the raid. So
Yeah.
15% less on that is going to mean that you're just going to like, it'll hurt, but you'll live through it unless you have multiple people doing it. So
Yeah,
having,
also
oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry. I was gonna say too, it sounds like this is a flat reduction over all parts of it, so the
Yeah.
dot ticks will also help. So the dot and
Yep.
the explosion, the individual takes
Yeah.
also reduced by 15%, which
Right.
will help any wipes where you get there's a bad overlap in P1 where it's like
Rune
bombs,
into
torment,
torment. Yeah.
yeah, into like the pull and suck in. And so
Yeah.
like people
Yeah.
who get that are sometimes a little bit low. So
We
yeah.
actually were losing people to rally expiring there, which was really funny. We had a rally up from the tank mechanic,
Yeah.
and it was being hit early enough that the rally would expire while people were falling with the bomb, like after doing
Oh
the bomb,
no. Yeah,
and so then they would like just die midair
yeah.
or die to falling
Yeah.
damage coming down.
Oh god, that's awful. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, we would lose people there, like the final one in phase two, because we'd go into a six stack right after the pull the suck in.
yeah.
And so like people would just be low with everybody moving all over the place. So this will help
Yeah.
definitely with that for sure.
Yeah. So the next set of runes is actually Rune of Compulsion in phase two. This is the one that you have to break the mind control shield or the shield in order to remove the mind control. On heroic, the shield has been reduced by another 35%. It already got nerfed in the last round of nerfs, and now it's been nerfed again. Um,
Yep.
this is good. Like so on Mythic, the only way to really break the shields in time is to have people stack under the boss, and then you throw a spear or an Ursul's Vortex at them, keep them in place,
Mhm.
and break the shields. On heroic, expecting people to consistently like stack under the boss for that mechanic is just a lot. Because again, if you don't break the shield, they die.
Yeah.
Um, so like that's just another one of those things where like on Mythic, I think that's fine. On heroic, it's another part of the reason that people just don't pug the boss on heroic. Like
Yeah. Push coordination. Yeah.
you really can't pug heroic jailer.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely it's tough. It's tough. But no, this will definitely help in terms of just like, yeah, the damage requirement. You don't have to get everybody right under the boss. You can sort of single target people out, which will be helpful. So um
Oh no, I got it backwards. Sorry, Rune of Compulsion. Is that phase 3? Is that the
n-
healing absorb?
n-
Because it says Rune of Domination will be cast 3 times during phase 2 on Mythic difficulty. Was 4 casts.
weird. Maybe they changed it. Compulsion is the mind control. Um
I'm pulling up our log now so I can actually look.
and domination is the the shield.
Alright,
So
hang on.
that has
Let's
to be
look.
split evenly.
Debuffs, Rune of Compulsion is something's weird.
Yeah, I think they just
Rune of
named these the
Compulsion
wrong thing.
is phase 2.
Yeah. I think they just messed up the note in that.
Yeah, Rune of Domination is phase 3. I think they swapped those.
Yeah. I think that's what they did.
Yeah.
But
Um, yeah, so Rune of Compulsion, phase 3, or sorry, so the phase 2 one, maybe, I don't know how to interpret this anymore. Maybe it's supposed to be Rune of Domination, because, like, you don't get 4 casts of Rune of Domination, or Rune of Compulsion in phase 3. You get 1. You maybe get 2, if you're, like, doing the old strat.
yeah.
Um, but you get, realistically, you get 1. So I'm thinking it's actually that the absorb is reduced on the phase 3 absorb, and then the phase 2 absorb happens less frequently on Mythic, which doesn't fix the
Maybe.
heroic problem. But maybe the heroic one is already nerfed enough. I don't know. I haven't
Yeah.
tried the bug heroic.
Yeah, that's weird. You're right. That's weird. Maybe they just messed up the naming on it.
Um, or maybe it's both supposed to be Rune of Domination. Who knows?
I guess we'll find out when the
We'll find
actual
out on
hotfix is here.
Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Um
but wait, there's still
there's
more.
like we've been talking about this forever. Like I want to stop. So, yeah, so the next thing is Shattering Blast, which is the tank mechanic
In the
in
phase 2
phase
tank
2.
mechanic. Yeah.
Has been reduced, damage has been reduced by 20% on all difficulties. This will be a huge help, particularly for us, just because our warrior
Oh yeah,
um
Warrior is super bad
wa-
for that.
our warrior would always die, would just be very low on one where like he would run out to a far pylon to
Yeah.
destroy it, and he couldn't get back because the surging Azerite were going off, and it was like that time period of him running out and then trying to get back in where he would dip very, very low.
Yeah.
um
Yeah, like
so
Brewmaster is one of the better ones for this. Like Brewmaster and Protection Paladin are actually pretty good for this. Um,
yep.
because Brewmaster, you just hit a cooldown and you hit Celestial Brew, and then like it takes long enough for you to tick out to the dot plus stagger that you can make it back to the boss and get healed, and you're okay.
Yeah.
Protection Paladin, you just heal yourself because you're you're half a healer, so you just heal yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Warrior doesn't have either of those things. Like they go out there and they hit shield block, and then they just have this massive dot ticking on them, and the dot just will kill them.
Yeah. Yeah, so he would always get externals as he ran out, and then like we would have healer, like we would have myself and one other healer basically run as soon as the surging Azerite was over. Like we'd
Yeah,
move over there. The boss was going to move that way anyway, but we'd move over there early just so we
yeah,
could top him off.
yeah.
Um, yeah, this will help there. The other thing coming in is Chains of Anguish, which is the chain break ability in it's phase 4 for sure. I think it's just phase 4, or is
No,
it?
this is phase
Yeah.
three.
Oh, sorry, phase 3. I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
so
phase 3.
there's two different related ones here. Chains of Anguish is the damage that goes on the people that are chained, and there's another one
Right.
2 lines down. This Chain Breaker that is from breaking the chains.
Gotcha. Yeah, so
So
Chains of Anguish damage has been reduced by 30% on Mythic difficulty, which is helpful because those, with the other mechanics that happen, I think, during the chains, these people were already very dangerously low,
yeah,
and needed special attention. So nice that there's a damage, like
right.
you'll lose basically less chain people, right?
And if they
Um,
die, their chain break happens immediately, which was an easy way to wipe. Like if someone breaks their chain as part of like a planned, like we're breaking the chain now, and then that causes another person that has been chained to die, you get a second chain break immediately. And outside of major cooldowns, it probably just kills the raid.
exactly. Yeah. So that damage was reduced, and then just in heroic, the actual chain break ability was reduced by 20%. Again, less damage when those chains do break, which is
Yeah.
always helpful. Less rate damage. And then the final, we are finally done. And so this is makes me think that the rune of domination change. I don't know. In any event, dominating will, which is the absorb put on by rune of domination in phase three. So like
Yeah.
that rune, if you guys don't know, it puts a circle around. It marks a couple players, puts a circle around you, and you need people to soak it. Those people get an absorb on you, and if that absorb is not healed off in time, you get mind controlled. But what they've done is they've reduced the amount of the absorb by 15% on heroic and mythic difficulties. Again, this just helps with the amount of the healing requirements, particularly in phase three.
Yeah, so
So
I think this is like I think it is supposed to be Rune of Domination twice
yeah,
in phase two. Like the healing absorb got reduced in phase two because there's
phase three.
no dominating will. You're right, is a separate ability in the log. Like dominating will is the absorb that you get from Rune of Compulsion in phase or sorry Rune of Domination in phase three.
Yeah,
So I think that those are both supposed to read Rune of
compulsion. Yeah, so
yeah
less cast in phase two,
yeah
and then also less healing. So less mind, which again, one less cast of rune of the mind control in phase two is also a damage increase,
right
right?
right.
So you have
Especially
less
if
of
it's
a
the one that's like the really bad over like the one at the very end of the fight
yeah,
where it goes like it's, you know, you do your surging azurite, you get charms, but they can't actually move in because of the tainted azurite under the boss, and you get
yeah,
torments and a knockback all like together.
and then you have
And
to move the boss
yeah,
for the start of phase three.
yeah. And so what we do for that is like each of the Azurite teams, like if you get a rune in your team, you are responsible for making sure they do not jump off the edge. Like they just
Yeah,
kind of like get towards Azeroth, and then their team is responsible for making sure they don't jump off the edge. And the ranged will help clear those runes if that's where they end up spawning. But that
gotcha.
just ended up being easier than trying to get people under the boss for this fucking surging Azurite torment decimator
Oh, it's
like
just yeah,
overlap.
yeah, awful, awful, awful. Yeah, awful overlap there. But no, that is, and I think that's all of the nerfs, right?
Oh
So
my god.
it's a ton. I mean, I think like we talked about at the start. I think the big like to be fair, I think the largest change, right, in my mind, is the Azerite radiation stacks, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Like stacking
Actually,
almost.
I don't know if it's definitely one of the most impactful. It's up there. I think the decimator not knocking back might actually be bigger for progression on this boss
That
because
is yeah.
there's a lot of really rough decimator overlaps. Like
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
think about like phase 4, you get you get meteor cleave into decimator and then you do a move. And that decimator is fine. But then you get torments into another decimator. But now there's like the file. It goes like bomb, torment, decimator, like all in a row, very short span of time. If that decimator is baited in a weird spot, it can be really difficult to not get knocked into a hole or knocked into the file or knocked into Azeroth or off the edge. You know, there's many ways to just like instantly wipe the raid there.
Yeah. Which I guess now that's yeah, without the knockback, your range positioning, at least in phase four, is much less impactful.
Yeah, I mean, it still matters
Right.
because that's where the rebel spawns, right? You want to make sure you don't get the rebel spawn
Yeah.
in a bad spot, but it's way less bad to like have
Yeah.
the rebel spawn in a bad spot without the knock because like you can then like okay the knock is happening, you can just hit roar, you know, hit your movement ability, hit blink, hit roar, hit roll, and just go and get away from
Yeah.
where the rebel is going to spawn and be okay and not worry about like am I going to be like mid roll and the knock happens and I get yeeted into this hole that I'm rolling past.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. I think that the knockback is huge. I mean the radiation I think will be big too, but yeah, you might be right. I think too, like, I mean, all these changes have like a ton of impact just in terms of like
Yeah,
the random wipes you may get. Like even like the tyranny stacks is going to be big because like we talked about, like your tank might not get mind control. You might not get a bad mind control just because of positioning, right?
yeah,
Um, yeah, the heal is nice. You can miss a tick or two of the heal now
yeah.
because you'll make that and it
So
being,
you can already, in order
fire.
to do the like only heal once in phase 3 strat, you can miss 2 total ticks of healing in the fight.
Gotcha.
And that has Azeroth run out of health at the same time as you get the second Desolation Beam in phase 3. And if you're already planning on not soaking that Desolation Beam, you don't need more health than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so like that, this takes it from being like 2 ticks to being like 5 ticks, maybe 4. Like you could basically miss an entire beam and
Yeah.
be at the same point.
And be fine, yeah.
Yeah. So Berthier in chat says, if you ask me, I think bosses have too many mechanics nowadays. It is too much for the average player. To make a fight still challenging with fewer mechanics like Sludge Fist, a patchwork fight with a tight berserk timer is more fun as a heal. I kind of agree. Like, I agree that some of these bosses have too many mechanics. I don't know that I would necessarily, like, I think Sludge Fist was a lot of fun, but I
Yep.
wouldn't want every boss necessarily to be Sludge Fist, right?
Yeah, and I think there's a like the way that I view fights like the Jailer or like Sylvanas or any of the end bosses, right? The later bosses is that the number of mechanics don't matter generally speaking. It's the dance you do with those mechanics, right?
Yeah.
So like the idea is like you can have a fight that has 10 mechanics, but like there's like a set time they go off and there's like a dance you learn with those mechanics and at that point it's fine. I think when you get to mechanic like and the other thing too is that the mechanics also like work together in terms of like that dance, meaning
Yeah.
like in the Jailer's aspect of it, like we talk about the knockback moving us for the rubble and then moving you from like a defile, right? And using
Yeah.
it that way. That's interesting when mechanics interlace. Uninteresting mechanics would be like Pantheon, where it's literally just a
Vomit.
vomit of like
Yeah.
multiple things happening. And it's just it's hard because of the amount of things that are happening all
Yeah.
at once, not because the mechanics sort of play on each other. So I
I
mean,
I
I
do think there is a point where like the number of mechanics do matter because you reach a point like if you imagine a 10-minute fight and every 15 seconds there's just a new mechanic, right? That's obviously harder
yeah,
to do than something where you know you do all the different like combinations of overlaps of like 4 abilities like you do on the Jailer in phase 1 and phase 2 where you kind of have these same 4 abilities that are going off, but they go off in different orders each time. So they overlap in slightly different ways. So like one time you get torments, then you do the bombs, then you do the lines. Another time
yeah,
you get the bombs, then the torments. Then another time you get the bombs, then the lines, and then you get the torments. And that's
yeah,
different variations on the same thing that asks you to handle the mechanics slightly different. Um, I do think the Jailer has like kind of too many mechanics. Uh, I don't
yeah,
I don't think it's like that
yeah.
far off, but I do think that there's just like in phase 2 in particular, like the overlap of like knock torment, surging Azerite, like the tainted Azerite stuff, and the mind controls and the tank mechanics
Yeah.
all happening is like
Yeah. Well, and the movement. I think like
yeah,
that's one mechanic that like gets overlooked, but it's still a
yeah,
mechanic. Is like even in phase two, there's like the one I always called it the squeeze movement, where like there's two pillars up and you have to get to the other side of the pillars. At
yeah,
least in the way we did it. So it's
yeah,
like there's a
yep,
very small amount of time to get through there. Plus torment is coming, so it's like you need to move your whole raid in through, spread out, and then collapse
yeah,
all within like a 10-second window, which isn't a ton of time or
yeah.
even less time.
So
So
I feel like actually, so they effectively like kind of removed Decimator as a mechanic.
right, yeah,
And I think
with
that
these
does
changes.
actually make the fight like it makes the fight easier. I think it also makes the fight less frustrating and generally better. I
Yeah,
wouldn't mind if it regains the knockback in phase 3 and phase 4. Personally, if that was just like a thing that happened.
yeah,
Um, but it definitely is going to make phase 1 and phase 2 nicer to progress. Um,
yeah,
and
yeah,
just like I think I do think that like there's definitely room for complexity. Like the Nathrius has a ton of mechanics, right? And each
right.
phase is like very distinct, and you do different things in them. And there's some things that are the same, like the I don't remember the name of the mechanic, the slicing sword mechanic from phase 2 that carries into
Oh
phase
yeah,
3, and you like do it differently because it overlaps with different mechanics, and that's cool. Um, I definitely like, yeah. I think that there is some truth to like there being just too many mechanics, and that contributes to stuff like needing weak auras to get through a fight.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I would
It's not the
say
only thing, but it's definitely some like a motivation for like having a weak aura is like there's too many things for me to actually track myself, so I need a weak aura to help me.
right. Yeah, and I think too, like there's something to say of like you can have a lot of mechanics, but if they're not overly complex, that's fine. It's when you
Yeah,
get into that
yeah,
idea of like having a bunch of mechanics that require very specific things to be done,
yeah,
or you wipe is like unfun,
yeah,
right? And like particularly like I think the one thing that made Jailer at least nice was like the some of the hardest mechanics I think in like phase 2 and phase 3 at least were positioning things, right? And
yeah,
you could practice those positionings before actually pulling the boss, meaning
yeah.
like
And they were
this
consistent, right? Like you could bait the
yeah.
decimator and you could bait the defile, and the or nothing was like spell queued. The order was fixed, so you could actually like do a dry run, like go over to the corner where you're gonna do the phase 3 start stuff, and like do a
Yeah.
dry run of like, okay, we do our decimator, then we run over here, and then we do the desolation beam soak, and we do our heal, and we do our bait, and we take the gateway. That's
Right. Yeah.
the dance, and you can go and you can practice that. So I think you're 100% right about that.
Yeah.
Um, I do think actually they underestimated, the designers of this fight underestimated how difficult like spatial awareness and positioning stuff is.
Well,
Uh,
yeah. It's and the fact that they continue to use line of sight as some sort of like mechanic is like so dumb. Like
yeah. They
ugh.
so imagine this, okay? Imagine if on this fight, line of sight were still a mechanic, but imagine if on your screen, like over your head, you got like big scary red eyes when you were in line of sight of the boss, and they went away or they closed when you weren't in line of sight of the boss. How much easier does that make phase one?
It's still hard. As a healer, it's still hard because like my problem is I can't heal people out of line of sight. Like I
But
can move
but
myself
now
out of line of
now
sight.
you don't lose people to being in line of sight of the boss. Basically,
That's fair.
is like now they have a clear thing, so the question is not how well can your players judge whether they're in line of sight of the boss.
Yeah,
It's
that's true.
how well can they actually get out of line of sight of the boss. Like it's an execution thing versus a like knowledge. Like can you like spam a spell and try and see if you're in range or in line of sight.
No, that I mean that would help. I think it's just line of sight as a mechanic in WoW is
Yeah,
like overplayed. And like to be fair, even if we think thematically, like the jailer casts a spell to dominate your mind, and the only thing you have to do is walk around a corner, like what the hell here? Like, what did we
yeah,
learn from Anduin then? Because like Anduin is like we like had to like break him out, and he was like, I know how to handle the domination magic. You just walk around the corner. Like it's so like it's so dumb. It's so stupid. It's like, hey, don't be like it's like don't look in Medusa's eyes and you won't turn to stone. So it's just like don't let the jailer see you and you don't get mind controlled. Like that's how you get around it.
yeah.
Whatever. Sorry.
That's actually hilarious. Um,
I just hate line of sight mechanics in general, and I think thematically they could have done something slightly different, still using the bombs, but
yeah,
not using the pillars. I think that would have been
yeah.
nicer. So
But yeah, I mean, I think personally, the lesson I would like for them to take from the jailer is
uh-huh.
actually just that um, having a lot of different mechanics that ask you to do like spatial awareness and positioning things overlapping at the same time is actually way harder than they give it credit for. Because that's another
Yes.
big reason that like you can't pug this boss on heroic. Like it's maybe okay for that to be a mythic thing, right? Some degree that I think is okay for mythic.
Yeah.
But on heroic, the like I guess it's like some combination of like it being literally just a death if you make a mistake with your spatial, like if you're not spatially aware enough to know that you're gonna get knocked into that hole, you're dead.
Right, right, right.
Like you're just
Yeah.
dead. Um,
Yeah.
where if it were like if they toned that down a little bit, maybe more holes were closed on heroics that were easier to like not get knocked into a hole.
Yeah.
Um, or something like that. Um, just like I think they underestimated how hard that is for a lot of people.
I would agree. Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. So, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I don't know. Maybe we get a couple expansion break of like the whatchamacallit, the line of sight mechanics. We haven't seen them really since
Ajara.
what Ajara was the last big one. So
And Ajara, at least
um,
the jailer, to the jailer's credit, it's only phase one. It's only part of phase one. And it goes away and you don't have to do line of sight anymore.
that's
Ajara
true.
was like line of sight the whole fight and it was awful.
No, agreed. Agreed. But yeah, I think that is everything. We're a
Yep,
little over time,
a little
but
bit.
I think we nailed it all. I mean, there was a lot of nerfs, and I
Yeah.
mean, I would say we'll leave it with like, congrats on all of your jailer kills next week if you are currently progressing on the boss.
Yeah.
Because I mean, with these, this should be if you have any amount of time into the boss, I'd say if you're over 100, probably 150 pulls, you have a kill next week. Within your raid time for sure. So
I wouldn't say for sure, but it's definitely possible. Whereas like
yeah,
without the nerves, it definitely wouldn't be.
yeah, yeah. That's fair. That's fair.
So yeah, that is it for the show today. Thank you all for watching and or listening. If you enjoyed this podcast and you want to support it and the other work that we do over on the Serenity, you can do that over on Patreon at patreon.com/Peak of Serenity. And of course, we would invite you to come and join the Discord. The lounge is, I think, currently talking. The Brew Lounge is currently talking about F1 racing because it's like,
Always. Yep.
always.
Hmm.
But the other
Good race.
lounges are less infested by F1 drama and should be more fun this time of day. But all of them are great. There's a lot of helpful people, all the questions channels, and in general, a great time. So we would invite you to come and. But that is it for the show today. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next week.
Bye.